For landings, one runway, enemy fire from every direction. Most pilots would turn back after the first hit. He didn't, because on the ground, soldiers were bleeding out, and he was their only way home. This is the true story of a pilot who landed 4 times under fire and survived what should have been impossible. Imagine this. Your aircraft is damaged. Fuel is leaking. The radio is screaming warnings. Below you, a battlefield. Above you, enemy anti-aircraft guns already locked on. And yet, you descend. Once is bravery. Twice is madness. But 4 times? This isn't a movie. This actually happened. War doesn't forgive mistakes. In combat aviation, one wrong decision means death. Not just for the pilot, but for everyone depending on him. During modern warfare, landing a plane in a hot zone is considered almost suicidal. Runways become kill zones. Every descent is predictable. Every approach is exposed. That's why most pilots are trained to do one thing under fire: get out. Fast. But this story is about a man who did the opposite. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't chasing glory. And he wasn't supposed to be a hero that day. He was a transport pilot, not a fighter ace, not a bomber legend. His job was simple: bring people in and bring them back alive. But on this mission, nothing went according to plan. The situation on the ground was collapsing. A unit had been pinned down. Casualties were mounting. Medical evacuation was urgent. Helicopters couldn't reach them. Too much fire. Too many losses. So command made a desperate call. They sent in a fixed-wing aircraft. That decision alone raised eyebrows. But what happened next shocked everyone. As the aircraft descended, the pilot saw it instantly. Tracers. Explosions. Smoke rising from both sides of the runway. This was no safe landing zone. This was a trap. The correct response would have been to abort. He didn't. The wheels touched the ground. Gunfire erupted. The aircraft took hits almost immediately, but he kept rolling. Soldiers ran toward the plane. Some were wounded. Some were carrying others. Seconds felt like minutes. The engines stayed hot. Then another explosion. The pilot knew. Staying longer meant dying. He took off. The aircraft barely cleared the ground. Most people watching thought that was it. They were wrong. Because as he climbed away, the pilot looked back at the runway and realized something terrible. Not everyone made it aboard. And the radio crackled with a message that changed everything. As the aircraft climbed away, alarms began to scream. Hydraulics unstable. Fuel pressure dropping. Warning lights everywhere. Any normal mission would end here. But the pilot wasn't thinking about the plane. He was thinking about the people still down there. On the radio, a voice broke through the static. "We still have wounded. We can't move them." Silence followed. Then command responded. "Negative. Do not return. The zone is too hot." This is the moment where heroes are made or buried. Because in war, disobeying an order can ruin your career. Or worse. But obeying that order would mean leaving men to die. The pilot had seconds to decide. Turn away, or go back into hell. He turned back. This time, the enemy was ready. They had watched the first landing. They knew the flight path. They knew the timing. As the aircraft lined up, anti-aircraft fire intensified. Rounds punched through the airframe. The cockpit shook violently. One hit the wing. Another tore through the fuselage. Still, he held the descent. The runway exploded with fire. The aircraft slammed down harder than before. Debris flew into the engines. Soldiers sprinted. One collapsed halfway. Another dragged him the rest of the way. The pilot saw it all through the cockpit glass. This time, the aircraft was bleeding. Fuel streamed from the wing. Fire was a real possibility. They took off again. Barely. In the air, the situation worsened. The plane was no longer combat capable. Structural damage. Control degradation. Landing once more would be insane. And command knew it. The radio came alive. Aircraft is not cleared for further landings. Repeat, not cleared. The pilot answered only one thing. Understood. And then he turned back a third time. This time, even the soldiers on the ground couldn't believe it. They saw the aircraft lining up again. Someone shouted, "He's coming back." Enemy fire intensified even more. The sky turned violent. This was no longer suppression fire. They were trying to kill him. The landing gear nearly collapsed. The aircraft skidded. The pilot fought the controls with both hands. More wounded were loaded. Faster this time. Desperation doesn't waste seconds. As they took off, something snapped. A warning light went dark. One system had failed completely. Now, the aircraft might not survive another descent. Command came in firm and final. "This is an order. Do not land again." The pilot said nothing. He looked at his instruments. Then he looked at the runway and made a decision that would define his life. The aircraft was no longer safe. Control systems were degraded. Fuel was critically low. Structural damage was severe. Any further attempt to land could mean one thing: no takeoff. But down on the ground, there were still men waiting, wounded, exposed, running out of time. The pilot knew this would be the last chance. Not just for them, for him. By now, the enemy expected him. Anti-aircraft fire began even before the descent. Rounds ripped through the air. One struck near the cockpit. Another tore through the tail section. Warning alarms filled the cabin. The aircraft shook like it was coming apart. And yet, the pilot stayed on course. No evasive maneuvers. No second chances. Straight in. The wheels hit the runway. Hard. So hard that for a split second, it felt like the aircraft wouldn't survive the impact. The landing gear screamed. The fuselage groaned. Fire erupted near the runway edge. Soldiers ran faster than they ever had before. No one waited for orders. Everyone knew this was it. The last evacuation. As the final wounded were loaded, the pilot saw something terrifying. Fuel was pooling under the wing. One spark. That's all it would take. The engines were already overheating. If they shut down, they would never restart. The pilot didn't wait. He pushed the throttles forward. The aircraft began to roll. Slowly. Too slowly. Damage had increased drag. The runway felt endless. Enemy fire continued. Rounds struck the ground around them. At the last possible second, the aircraft lifted. Barely. Clearing the runway by meters. Everyone on board knew that was the line between life and death. As the aircraft climbed away, the fire below faded. The radio was silent. No one spoke. Only when they reached safe airspace did command finally break the silence. "Aircraft, you are clear." The pilot exhaled. For the first time in hours. The aircraft was later inspected. The results shocked even experienced engineers. Multiple critical systems destroyed. Structural damage beyond design limits. Several hits that should have caused catastrophic failure. One report stated plainly, the aircraft should not have survived the third landing. And yet, survived for. The pilot never called himself a hero. In interviews, he said only this: "I did my job. No dramatic speeches. No bragging. Just a quiet understanding that sometimes doing your job means risking everything." We talk a lot about heroism in war. But real heroism doesn't look like movies. It looks like calm hands on shaking controls. Like choosing others over yourself. Like going back when you've been told not to. For landings under fire weren't about courage. They were about responsibility. The soldiers he rescued lived. Some returned home. Some started families. Some are alive today because one pilot refused to leave. And the next time you hear someone say, "It's impossible," remember this story. Because once, a pilot proved that impossible is sometimes just a decision.